Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is Thursday, September 12th, 2019. And today we're going to talk about the global currency reset, the state of the geopolitical landscape in terms of policy and financial, the whole economic outlook and all of that with two people who are returning to the GoldFish Report. Of course, we have the Red Dragon Ambassador joining us. How are you today, Ambassador?
I'm very fine. Thank you very much.
And of course, we also have returning to the GoldFish Report is Benjamin Fulford from the White Dragon Society. Welcome back, Benjamin. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me back.
Benjamin, in your recent article, one of the reasons that we're doing this report today is now on a very international and public level. The discussion of a global currency reset is actually out in the open, and they're publicly talking about this, as you pointed out in your August 26th article. We have Christine Lagarde talking about the need for a financial reset. Also during that meeting in what was that? I'm sorry. Oh, this other meeting in Jackson Hole, they were also talking about the need for a global currency reset. And we know that when the Fed, when we went off the gold standard, we know that, households really needed two people to work and bring it in. You used to be able to have a one household, income that would support the family, and he would have the traditional mother staying at home with the children, whatever. That just went out the window, because now today everybody relies on debt, and the problem is, how do you transition a society off of debt without there being some major event that happens? And the Zionists have been trying to, as you pointed out, Ambassador, before we started the report, to start war. We've got rid of the warmonger, John Bolton. And so now it looks like that option's off the table. So where do you see, Benjamin, let me just go to you first. And where do you see this going at this point, Benjamin?
Well, they could go two ways. And one way is they actually, come to some sort of fundamental East-West agreement, and there is a really good, well thought out reboot of the system. But it's also possible that the controllers of the current system will cling to power and control until it continues to collapse. And that's mathematically certain it is going to collapse. Which would be a much worse outcome. But right now, it's really up in the air. I know a lot of high-level people are pushing, but a lot of very powerful people who have the current money machine in their hands are fighting tooth and nail to keep it that way.
And isn't that because the fractional reserve, the whole central banking system was really only meant to last about 50 years or so, and it really was not a long-term solution with the fractional reserve spending and all of this. It just seemed like, and the debt model can only last if that currency is going to remain the reserve currency, and we know that it's not. Ambassador, you know that the yuan is very strong. Countries are dropping the U.S. dollar. Where is this going in terms of currency?
I see. Right now, still we are in a currency war, because all the yuan is a strong currency. It's very gold backed, and it's devalued a lot. And that's what is the problem here, is that the yuan is, it's too much devalued, and that is affecting all the other countries, because we're supposed to have currency set up by the agreements that should represent what is the backing of a currency. If it's gold, or if it's oil, or if it's in-ground assets, whatever it is, should be calculated into backing of one's currency. And it has been currency manipulations, but that has been a way to wage a war to put pressure on the cabal, and and it's working. And as you see, I don't know if you paid attention to it, but now the Hong Kong Stock Exchange wanted to buy the London Stock Exchange, and they already control the gold and silver exchange in London. That means basically that China is controlling the whole financial system, both for Britain and also for Italy. And what needs to be happening, what needs to be done for the global currency reset, by my opinion, to happen is that the remittance needs to be done. Okay, that means that the calculations and inspections of the different warehouses and also the physical assets and the the accounts, that is the off ledger accounts, they need to be settled and put into the new mother accounts, which is being done as we are speaking. And when that thing is done, then basically I believe that we will see a new world relation to currencies and values of currencies.
Yeah. Okay. I got into all this, way back because my first job was a commodities futures reporter, and things like, trade deficits were really driving the market. And I still see that underlying everything, all this financial wizardry and these astronomical numbers mean nothing without the real world. And if you look at the real world trends, in terms of ships full of stuff and factories making, and you realize that it's mathematically inevitable that something has to break in the United States. They've been, getting ships arriving full of stuff and leaving empty for, I think, almost 50 years now. And the system, but they still control the system, but the underlying reality is abandon them, but they just don't want to give it up. I mean, what do you think? Don't you think something has to happen to the United States? Don't they have to go through some sort of public and formal bankruptcy?
Yeah, I think that's the plan. I mean, the plan is that it has to go bankrupt, and so it's the question is just the time. I think this is, the people that controls the Federal Reserve basically is controlled by the family in some sense, but it's controlled by the under controllers, which is the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and Morgans, and Stanleys, and all these other criminals. They are, the ones that needs to go bankrupt. You understand? And
Yeah.
And remit what they owe to to the family and to the system and to the people of this planet. And I think that it's imminent, and I think that's the reason why Trump was actually put in power in the first place, was to make sure that this bankruptcy would be smoother and would be done.
Yeah,
Right.
the thing about Trump that worries me is that, after the 35-day government shutdown earlier this year, he seems to have suddenly, all the military left his government and he hired a bunch of neocons, and, suddenly seemed to completely change. I mean, so I'm just hoping that now that they fired John Bolton, and soon, hopefully, they'll get rid of Elliot Abrams and these other nut jobs, that it'll happen. But this year, I've seen things go really backwards as far as Trump is concerned. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think so too. I think he's under extreme pressure from the Zionists, and because you have two fractions of Zionists. You have a Jewish Zionist and you have a Christian Zionist.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, these two groups, they are pushing and controlling him at this point of time. And they are, the Jalal Kushner, his daughter, she is, she is a strong person in his life and affecting him. And we know for sure that, Mr. 666 there, Jared Kushner, he's also a person that, they're having a lot of power over Trump. So, this is the problem that I see, is that sometimes he's going for his heart, and then he's doing the right things, and then suddenly these people come in and they twist him and then start controlling him. And I think also this Epstein story, I think that Trump is, with Melania was supposedly the person that introduced, was introduced to him by this Epstein and these people. So, God knows what they have on him too. You understand? Because he has lived a life where, he has, probably dirt under his fingers.
Of course, I mean, my understanding is that according to the original plot, he was supposed to be the designated loser and Hillary Clinton was supposed to get in. But even a designated loser, he wouldn't get to the job of presidential candidate if they didn't have dirt on him. And it's clear that they're jerking his chain right now. His actions and his words prove it. Like before he was talking about 911, truth before he got elected. Now he's just suddenly, 180-degree change. They still don't want to talk about it because they did it, yeah, I think that unfortunately they either have to remove Trump or they have to tell him, look, don't worry about any skeletons in your closet. We'll back you up. We'll hide the skeletons as long as you help save the planet. One or the other, but not the way things are going now. But clearly, I think we heard all this talk about Epstein and about people taken to Guantanamo and tribunals and stuff, and suddenly, it's not happening, or at least it's not public. There's a clear, huge fight against it.
You're right, Benjamin. And, people were looking forward to those Q drops because they were really revealing. There was the largest intel drop in U.S. history, this whole QAnon. We know that it's military. And as you pointed out in your previous reports, the military is in control of the United States at this point. Is it the military-industrial complex, or is it is it the White Hats that are behind Trump? So I think he has a lot of people on his team making the decisions. And it is disappointing to see that kind of stop. That 8chan was taken down because the server, the company who was doing the hosting for them was taken down. Apparently, they used that shooting as an excuse, saying it's harboring, radicalism or whatever, or extremism or whatever like that, which is just, BS. But we also know that Q said that gold will take down the Fed, and if you see the prices of gold, going up, I think at a certain point, we're going to start seeing that it's inevitable because, again, the debt is people are as you're saying, Benjamin, there has to be some kind of event or something. Something has to change, and it's like there's this mystery as to how that's going to happen. And a lot of people are saying there's going to be a major crash, and I don't think they're going to let that happen because we're the economic engine of the world. So I don't really see how they're going to let that happen. And you're right, Benjamin, and the ambassador. I think there's got to be some kind of reboot of the system, as you said, and because we can't continue in debt, and if people didn't have debt in their life right now, I don't know how they could survive. So clearly, we need to have some kind of changeover, but it's probably going to be a little painful. But so, Ambassador, what do you think about? Do you think the U.S. dollar is obviously devalued? We are hoping that the president will bring in a new U.S. Treasury note. There's been a lot of talk that there is one. And when he'll make that announcement, we don't know. But it seems like that there is a plan in place to get us through this transition. So it's not talked about openly, except for when, of course, Benjamin had noted in his report that they are starting to talk about a global currency reset. So what would that look like in the United States? Are we going to keep the U.S. dollar? Are we going to introduce a gold-backed dollar? What do you project?
I mean, the new dollar has been launched in the central banks for a long time. It's now a few years that it's been there, but it has not gone public to the normal people, like yourself, when you go and buy things in your store and stuff like that. But the new it's printed already in the central banks. It's been there. It is devalued compared to what the thing is, and it's supposed to go down even more. It's supposed to go in tranches, so we should not be too like aggressive on the people. But you know, someone in the United States is trying desperately to buy time and you know, draw out on this thing. Now, when you look at the,
Can you
you know,
speak up a little, Ambassador? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
uh,
You speak up a little bit. Thanks.
okay, no, like I said, I think it's important that you know, it's supposed to go in tranches. It's supposed to be going down in you know, from being worth 60% to later 40 and down even to 14. You understand, of the value what it is today. But we have not. You know, it has been delayed and delayed and delayed. But I mean, on the, you know, on the screen, or you know, wherever, but the screen that we don't see, the central bank screens and this gray screens and all these other things, you know, we have seen the currency going down, and also we see, you know, that you know, it's also a lot of gold that has been stolen, you know, from Iraq and from Libya and from other places like that. And this things also needs to be settled. You understand? We need to be recuperated. You know.
Ambassador, here's the thing, though, as Mark Carney at the Bank of England said at Jackson Hole this summer, and I've been saying for years, is that right now something like, was it 70% of the world's currencies are just link themselves to the dollar, right? So if they lower the dollar, everything else goes down too. So it doesn't really have the desired effect. And I keep repeating, the United States as an economy needs to have a currency separate from, actually, you know what? I'm going to say something now. We shouldn't call it the US dollar, okay? Let's call it what it really is, the UN dollar, okay?
True.
They've got to stop using the UN dollar and issue their own currency, which will have a lot less value. It'll hurt at first because they can't buy all the junk at Walmart at the same price, but it's going to be the only solution. And they can't do that. They won't do it because it means a loss of international power for a certain group of mostly Zionists, is my view.
What about, at some point, a few, like last year, Winston Shrout had published an article called a two-tier monetary system, a two-tier currency. Like so there you have the currency for the international trade, and then you have a local currency. So one's really for, government, one's for the people. And so therefore you can't, people can't launder and they can't steal the money from the people, whatever. What do you think about that, Benjamin? And I'm going to ask the ambassador what he thinks about that too.
It depends on how it's done, but certainly if you had a domestic currency issued by the U.S. government, you could pay for, rebuilding your infrastructure, education, welfare, helping farmers, all that kind of stuff would work. And when you want to get stuff from the rest of the world, you have to pay the world price, which would be using the UN dollar, So yeah, but I think that would work depending on how it's done.
Ambassador, what do you think about that? Just get your comments.
No, the way that I look at it is this way, that just like Benjamin said, I was trying to find a photo to show you both on the euro, as the central bank euro. I wanted to show you something interesting, but like he stated, if the US dollar goes down, it's also going to affect the euro, because the euro and the dollar is interconnected too, and it's the same people controlling both Federal Reserve that controls the European Central Bank
and the Bank of Japan.
Yeah, and even on you can see it on the central bank notes. I'm trying to find them here at the same time we're speaking, so the people could see it.
But what I've been pushing for, and I still think needs to be done. I every September and January, the U.S. government has a payments deadline, and I'm hoping that this time on September 30th, they'll finally stop them from kicking the can down the road. And the way to do that is to make sure you get the U.S. military on board. You explain to them that this is going to be good for the United States. It's going to be good for the U.S. military. It's going to be good for the planet. They're just getting rid of a bunch of criminals and helping the United States get healthy again by removing, you know, a non-productive, highly destructive financial construct that has lost touch with the underlying physical economy and people.
Well, Q said, according to Q, and I'm bringing it up because he makes a very good point, whoever Q is, said that gold will end the Fed. And exactly what do you think that Q meant by that?
Talking to me?
Either one. I don't know, Ambassador. You still looking for that photo? I'll ask Ben.
Yes, I'm gonna. Let's see here.
All right.
I'm gonna share it with you. Some of these currencies here. Okay, wait a second.
Okay.
Let's see if it goes on now.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Oh, that's your nephew.
Yeah.
Sorry.
This was not the photo that I tried to share.
Right.
Well, at least it wasn't something more embarrassing. Eh?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Benjamin. Yeah.
Well,
So,
I make sure I have no such photos on my camera, of course. But anyway,
so
no,
Benjamin,
I mean not of babies, but I mean of something else. Like that. Anyway.
Yeah.
But now here's the thing about gold. All right, is that as far as I know, the United States doesn't have gold, so they need to have it backed by what they do have is like farmland and actual stuff that's in the United States. And the shale oil is a big one now. All that kind of real stuff is what they need. But as far as I know, they don't have the gold.
Well, it's been rumored Fort Knox has been empty for a long time. So we have some gold somewhere. Some people are reporting we have like over 300 billion in gold somewhere. I don't know, like 8.
Look, I've been told all these stories about giant warehouses full of gold, and for 10 years now, as I've been chasing this, nobody has been able to pass my simple test. Buy a local newspaper with a recent date and hold it in front of the gold and take a picture.
Yeah.
They can't do it.
Yeah.
It means that all they got is old pictures, or they don't have, they can't access it.
Right, they don't have access, exactly.
And then they tried to use tungsten, and that didn't work,
Mm-hmm. Ambassador, what do you think about gold ending the Fed? Do you think how that is going to happen, how this will happen?
No, I think that they will make some event happen. Most likely a war somewhere, a major war. And when that thing happens, they will collapse it. They need to have something to blame it on.
Right. They're not going to take responsibility for the fact that it was failed. It was a failed system to begin with, and they knew that going into it. They're not going to admit that.
Yeah, and they need someone also to take a hit, and maybe that would be Trump. When you look at these candidates that it's that you have for the new election. I mean, it's no one. I was actually, to be honest with you, I was almost vomiting yesterday when I was watching this Tulsi Gabbard talking about 9/11, understand? And these people are not brain dead, you understand? But when they are pushing propaganda, you understand?
Right.
Just pushing it, and and it's an obvious lie, and they know that it's a lie, but still they are pushing it. It's like disgusting.
Well, what about the timing of all this? We see that, this whole thing with Jeffrey Epstein being the keystone, and some are saying that he was the keystone in terms of this whole plan. And he's going to implicate a lot of people, very high level people. We know over the past 2 years, Benjamin, you've reported this too, how many politicians, how many CEOs, how many resignations, thousands of resignations, thousands of people jumping ship, many people not running for re-election. And that's how we ended up getting all these, liberal extremists in our House.
No, the U.S. Political system, like I say, I mean, as a reporter or journalist, you write a story, and sometimes, no matter how you try to fiddle with it, it doesn't work, and you have to delete the whole thing and start again. And that's definitely the case with the U.S. political system and economic system. It's broken, and fiddling with it, jacking up the stock market artificially, stuff like that isn't going to work. they need a jubilee, and they need to remove the entire circus in Washington D.C. And start from scratch. I mean, look at what they're paying, like 18% a year on health, and then they're dying younger every year. And most of that money is going to people who aren't even doctors, or who are administrators. That is a sign of a broken system.
Well, it's a sign of a sick system. In fact, it's like a cancer eating away at the United States, and it really needs to end because we're up against a wall. But Benjamin, what you just said was an excellent point. Because we're all living in a debt society, okay, our system is run on debt. There has to be some sort of jubilee. And I think that, Ambassador, I remember you announcing this 5 years ago, but somehow it hasn't trickled down. It kind of stopped. Where's the status of that, Ambassador?
No, the status of that was that the agreements were made in Brazil, and this what I don't remember her name again now. It's, the woman president.
Right.
What is it? What you remember
yeah.
the name of her?
No, I'll look it up.
Either way, she went and she took the bait in America, and she destroyed and circumvented the whole plan, because it was started there with with a major investment system of release of funds that's supposed to go through Brazil and spread through the whole Americas and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all done, and then she basically went in and took corruption money and sidelined the whole thing, and then after that it was dead. Now I'm going to show you very fast you see here the euro.
Okay.
This is my hand. Let's see here.
That's like €1 million.
Yeah, 1 million euro. This is from the central bank. But if you look, can you see? If you look at the mark there, you see the mark underneath the euro?
Yeah.
It's a little blurry, but okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit blurry. See if I can find it. And also you can see here, this certificate is backed by the European dream. That means basically it's backed by the citizens of Europe.
Are the confidence
here,
of the European?
Yeah. You see here, if you look, that is the little mark there, the black one there. It's basically a euro and a dollar intervene together. They glone together there. You see here?
Isn't this like cryptocurrency then? This has kind of got the same value as a cryptocurrency? Is it not?
No,
but what's it backed by? It's backed by...
No, basically this is backed by the people. The people are the backing. You understand? It's the slaves. It basically insult the people.
Right.
And stake basically is backed by the slaves in Europe. The European Union slaves are backing this currency. Nothing else.
Yeah. Well.
But what I wanted to show you there is basically that the dollar and the euro on the note is intertangled in a logo. So they show that it's European Central Bank and the Federal Reserve is one and the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, what about the issue of cryptocurrencies? Do I think so. Who was it?
And here you have.
You have more pictures.
Yeah, you have 1 million euros here. This is also taken from the central bank. The 500 ones. No one can these days wants to have a 500 euro. So if you have that, then there's a problem to exchange them anywhere.
Can you take that €1 million note to a bank and actually use it?
No, you can't. You would be arrested if you come there, because it's a central bank. It's a central bank currency. So basically, what they would do is that they would say that, "How did you get it?" I have another one that I was. This is really, really annoying. Either way, we'll do it next time. So I wanted to show a British pound, 500 million
Okay,
British
and so
pound.
they're sending all these over to China? Because I've heard
Yeah,
of
that's
giant warehouses full of shrimp wrapped dollar bills in China already. Is that true?
yeah, yes, it's true. I was there together with one general, the discharge of the financial thing of Secret Service there in China, and he was bringing me to this place where they're, storing the money and gold. And so I've seen these warehouses as you talk about, and and there they had this these metal boxes that I showed there on the photo, full with euros and dollars, and then these central bank notes. But also these central bank notes, it was some people in Poland that succeeded to for a robbery on a bank. They succeeded to get this 1 million euro notes, and they were arrested with them. And then the central bank said it was that this euro was a fraudulent one. You understand?
Mm.
But you see, this euro is basically instead of printing 500, 500s, they print 1 millions, and it takes up less space. But that's given to the central banks to keep.
Mm. Okay, so what about these bonds, these Super Pacelli bonds and these other bonds? I don't know if that's one of the ones you have. You had asked about that once in the past, Benjamin. Ambassador, how do those bonds get redeemed? Do you know?
So when the remittance comes, basically all these bonds is already on this gray screen. Gray screen is the screen for basically debt. It's a debt screen, interest screen. And on these different screens, you have debt, which is this bonds. And so, there they see, who was that bond's caretaker and so on and so on.
Mm.
But now when the remittance is done, when it comes to the accounts and then physical assets, then they will have to settle also this debt, which is from the bonds. But the value that is paid out is like 10 basis points of 1%, which will be given to the keeper. Okay? But these bonds are worth, if you take a treaty of Versailles box, for example, which was 3 trillion US dollars when it was, now it's around value about 30 trillion, then you take 1% and then 10 basis points to the people that is involved, and then 90 to the keeper, if the keeper is alive.
What do you think about the possibility, or how probable is it that the U.S. could use a cryptocurrency? I think, who was it, Bill Gates, who wanted to introduce the Libra or something? It was called the Libra. What do you think about that? Do you think it's realistic?
No, I think that. Yeah.
Sorry, Ambassador. I'll say Ambassador first, then Benjamin. Yeah.
So the way that I look at it is that now everyone is, they're doing a crypto-yuan also. Right now everyone wants to do this cryptocurrencies, but this cryptocurrencies is basically satanic. It's gonna be used for destroying ourselves. Now they're brainwashing us to like it, and we want to use it. And look at China now, for example, when you can do all your transactions with your phone, but as soon as your battery dies, then you're fucked. I'm sorry to use hard words.
Okay.
And that's why the cryptocurrencies are so dangerous, because you cannot control it. It can be hacked, it can be taken. You understand?
That was very true. That's what happened. I mean, but so Benjamin, did you want to copy on? I'm sorry, did you want to comment on that?
I was just today at the Foreign Correspondents Club with the famous investor Jim Rogers, who was speaking there, and he said something I agreed with. He said all the cryptocurrencies are going to go to zero. And the only cryptocurrency that remains will be one controlled by governments. They have the guns. And I think he had a point there. I don't think the Libra, well, Libra is what? that's the same people who own the Fed trying to make a sneaky shift to a cryptocurrency and stay in control. You know, it's like changing uniforms and staying in the same office. You know, but that's not going to happen. And the other thing that people, you know, keep forgetting is that digital is not real. The real world is stuff you can actually hold in your hand, and the crypto will exist in a way, and it's always existed in the sense that even bats have, even was it vampire bats have cryptocurrency. What happens is that every night they go out and they drink blood, and some they find a cow and they get a lot of blood, some they come home empty, and the ones that come home empty, they get blood from the other bats. But over time, they keep a tab on who's been, you know, giving blood and who's been drinking blood, and at a certain point they say, hey, look, you know, you've been drinking too much, you haven't been giving us all, we're going to cut you off, you know. And that's same with a bar tab. Maybe that's a better example, you know. You could say it's just a virtual thing, but at a certain point, if you aren't paying your tab, they're not going to let you have any more beer, you know. And that's the situation with the United States. Okay? Regardless of everything else, just keep your eye on the real world, things that really exist. And, you know, and the thing about, you say that you have a debt-fueled system, but it's the United States that has a debt-fueled system, not other places. Japan doesn't run on debt. I don't think even, you know, most of the world runs on credit, or people save money. They don't borrow money. So it's just a problem. And what happens, you know, for people when they go bankrupt is that temporarily there's a fall in living standards, but then they're earning real money again, and then they can have a healthy system. But you cannot keep just getting stuff from everybody else and not paying for it, and that's kept track of, and that psychological process of keeping track can be turned into crypto. But behind that, there's the real world. There's stuff that actually exists. You can't eat crypto and you can't eat gold.
No, but if some of this is, I mean, it's integrally related to the trade, though. I mean, currencies are directly related to trade, because without fair trade, you know, without a more even playing field on currencies, we don't have fair trade. So that's why President Trump, I think, he knows, he's very well aware. Look, he's aside from the fact that he's a billionaire himself, self-made, he's a CEO. He knows how to, you know, run balance sheets, and he understands how to run profitable organizations, and he knows how to trim the fat. He knows how to fire people. He knows how to get the job done.
And he also knows how to do a Chapter 11, which is what the United States needs to do.
Right. Well, maybe that's what he's doing, because what you see is he's really strong on trade. Everywhere he's going, he's making deals. You know, in the G7, he just walked away with, of course, Shinzo Abe made this deal to buy our corn. So that was
absolutely, but that's really petty stuff. Okay, you know, you can twist people's arms to buy, you know, really expensive stuff up to a point, but it's not a long-term solution. You have to have products that are competitively priced, and as I keep repeating, you can't do that unless you have a currency that actually suits your actual economy, and that's not the UN dollar.
No, I agree, but I'm saying that I think Trump's trying to, and Ambassador, you can weigh in on this. I mean, is this not a good approach to try to soften the blow when it happens? That look, if he's bringing in billions of dollars in tariffs, as he says he is, where's that money going for the United States?
To pay debt.
Right, to pay debt, but but somehow we have to. Is that not going to soften the blow when this reevaluation happens, when we change over to this new currency?
It's just a tax on American people. Don't fool yourselves, okay? You know, J.P. Morgan did the math at just a 10% tariff. It's costing each American household $1,000 a year, and now it's going to be a lot more. That is money taken from the American people to pay foreign debt, and pretending it's anything else is BS.
Right, Ambassador, do you want to comment on that?
No, I agree with Benjamin. It is a scam, basically. You understand? And you know, they're fooling the people with it. It's just a way to faster get back the money to pay the debt, and the cabal is using this as a way to basically bankrupt the people. It's like a reverse psychology. They know that most people doesn't know how the system works.
Right.
So then they just twist the things and make it up, and then, you know, and people think that, oh, you know, it's great, this is going great, it's going great, and then in reality they are the ones being screwed.
But is he not trying to leverage the value, you know, is he not trying to leverage, though, by paying down the debt, then our currency will be worth more, it won't be worth less?
No, well, the problem is this way, that
Just
what
pennies.
needs to be done is that you need to have a Federal Reserve being removed.
Right.
Understand?
Mhm.
As long as Federal Reserve is a sovereign entity and our own corporation, you know, you guys gonna pay the debt for the Federal Reserve, and like slaves, and basically they will, later on do bankruptcy, but then the money will go into their pockets. You know, it's a very, big game being played. You know, and that's why when we started the wage a war on ignorance, you know, now a lot of people with the QAnon and other things that has been going on, and the work that we've been doing here, is to basically awaken the goldfish to what's going on. But the problem is the goldfish has a short memory span, so you have to, all the time repeat and repeat and repeat, because otherwise he will forget what we've been told. You know.
But it's
So
interesting in the case of Epstein that they said he committed suicide officially, and only 28% of Americans believe the government story. And that's way less than even for like 911 or Kennedy or anything else. It means that they're, they understand at a deep level they're getting poorer and the government's lying to them. And that is a good sign for me. That's a sign that we're almost close to systemic collapse of the, parasitical superstructure that the United States has developed.
Well, look at San Francisco. I mean, Benjamin, Ambassador, did you ever think in a million years that you would be talking about a town, a city within the United States that actually has to have street signs put up to warn people of human feces? I mean, this is so embarrassing. It's so disgraceful. I don't know what it's going to take for people to really wake up and demand from our representatives, really take part in, participate in, we the people, by the people, for the people. The people checked out. And you know what? This candy store is going to get robbed. If the people are going to check out and not mind the store is going to get robbed. And that's what's been happening. Store's been robbed. And, you have to say, for America being the light of the world, it's a big disappointment that the American people have not held this government accountable. And I'll say this, though, in their defense, it has been, they have been engineered this way, socially engineered, without their, unwittingly. The American people are being censored. They're not getting access to the truth and the facts because the media controls everything. So they are limited to what kind of information they can really get. And it takes an enormous amount of effort, if you're not familiar with this, to start looking and researching and finding out, well, this illusion that they painted for us is just that, an illusion, and it's not what's really going on the surface of things. So I'm disappointed that not more American people are actually holding the government accountable. I think, 100 years ago, everybody took part in it. Everybody was down at the meetings and at the court appearances and things like that. I mean, everyone took part in the making of the republic and developing it. And today people have checked out. And also, in their defense, it's that, you can't trust anybody. I think there's a real loss of faith, which is what you're saying, Benjamin. There's a loss of
Well,
faith
no, I mean,
in the
here's the
government as
thing.
well.
This is the last opinion polls I saw. Something like 90% of Americans don't trust the Congress, but close to 70% still trust the military. The thing about the military is that they get paid a normal wage, not millions of dollars, and they've kept on. There's still the institution that needs to step in and remove all the garbage and reboot the system. There's nobody else who can do that job. The only other way it's going to be done is by foreigners. And I pushed for a Canadian takeover of the United States. you can badmouth Justin Trudeau, and that's fine. I'm not a big fan of Justin Trudeau. It's nothing to do with him, the individual. But Canada as a country has very high standards of living for 90% of the people or more, not for 10%. And, it's have a low crime rate. It's just a much better society. And you have those people come in and clean up the mess and reboot it as the United States of North America. That's the sort of solution we need, not just, jacking up the stock market a bit longer.
Ambassador, do you want to comment on that?
I think that Canada is an interesting place, because they're having a lot of immigration going there.
Mm-hmm.
And still, with all the immigration that is going to Canada, they don't have this, high criminal rates like Europe has. And so they take, like, for example, Norway, who claims to be one of the best countries in the world to live in. I was there, 2 weeks ago or something like that, and it was, I see so many drug addicts and beggars and the things on the streets there. I don't know who is making this propaganda about Norway. You understand? And the problem is in Scandinavia or these countries that the media is brainwashing the people, and that's why I think it's important that the people who has the knowledge, like the military, the people in power or different police and intelligence agencies, they need to do the work and arrest the real criminals. Like Stoltenberg, for example, he needs to be arrested and send him to Gitmo, where he belongs. And I met him when he was the prime minister. At that time, I had a good feeling about the guy, but now since he became head of NATO, he's demon possessed.
He's demon possessed.
Yeah, he needs to be arrested for the safety of the world.
Well, where are we going to go here? I mean, in the last 10 minutes or so that we have, let's just try to focus on what indicators we have to, or what do we need to do? What can certain individuals, if you were the one trying to, as Benjamin said, turn this ship around, and that's not an easy task to do in your last report. It's not an easy job, but what do you think are critical elements that actually have to happen? And let me start with Benjamin.
Okay, the first thing you need to do, I mean, I was in Latin America when several different military coups d'etat took place. And basically, if you want to overthrow a government, you send in your tanks to the central bank, you send it to the broadcasting center, to get control of the TV stations, and then the presidential office, I mean, so in the United States, the U.S. military needs to physically occupy Washington, D.C. and remove every politician who's been bribed. They need to go into the Fed and take over. They need to move into the 6 media conglomerates and Google and Facebook headquarters and take over and start by telling people the truth. Okay, the system's broken. We're going to have to reboot it. Here are some of the plans and start a debate on it. But basically, at this point, unfortunately, I don't think soft landing is an option. I think people need to, have a sudden drop, a sudden jack up of prices of things that they can't afford, like Chinese trinkets in Walmart. But the important thing is to bankrupt Washington, D.C. and the EU and replace them with more healthy, functional, democratic and meritocratic institutions. I'm in favor at this point of the military calling an emergency, coming in, and then when in full transparency, that everybody know exactly what happened, and then reboot the system and start with a jubilee.
That sounds great. If you're running, I'll vote for you. It sounds very good, Benjamin. And I think you made a lot of good points. And of course, the reason why it's the military's obligation is because the military is sworn to defend against enemies, both foreign and domestic. And clearly we have an enemy within. And so that would certainly qualify for the military to to do exactly what you're doing. So that's actually very realistic. And as Trump being the commander-in-chief, that's very realistic that he may do that. In fact, he's, I wouldn't say threatened, but I mean, a lot of people in the mainstream media have stated that he's threatened to actually use the Emergency War Act to, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, in fact, to basically regulate international commerce, to put pressure on China because this China war is going on. And you're right. I mean, who needs, you know, to buy the cheap junk over at Walmart from China, to be honest? And it does seem like, you know, China really needs us more than we need them at this point.
Well, no, but that's where you're wrong, because the big mistake they made was they moved all the factories to China. Okay, so
right.
they actually make things. Okay, and things, in the end of the day, are worth more than numbers and computers, which is basically what the Americans are left with. So you have some good agricultural land, you have some shale, you have some good people, but you need to start from scratch. You need to reboot. I mean, it's not, unfortunately, you think that look, here's the point. If you have a customer who never pays his bill, losing that customer isn't going to hurt you as much as it's going to have that hurt the customer, because he can't get the free stuff anymore. Okay? You don't have the real underlying stuff to back up the actual living standards you have. You're borrowing money from the rest of the world, and at some point you got to go cold turkey. It happened to me when I lost my Forbes job. Okay, I stopped getting this cushy monthly big salary, and I had to actually work. But it's been really good for me, and I think everyone should go through that process. And you know,
Right.
but you know, there's no other way around it. You got to stop using the UN dollar and issue a national currency, and that's going to hurt a bit when you can't get free stuff from the rest of the world. But it's going to be really, really quick turnaround, and suddenly you're going to be exported to the whole world. You're going to have tourists from everywhere. Things are going to be much, much better within a year of going cold turkey. That's my
Right.
bet.
But that's why Trump wants to perhaps, you know, enact this so he could bring the manufacturing back to the United States. So he wants to, in fact, that's what he's trying to do, is to bring more manufacturing to the United States.
Yes, but you can't do that unless you have a competitive currency, which you don't have, because, as I said, the UN dollar does not suit the U.S. economy. What they've been trying to do, and they're sort of succeeding, is they're bringing U.S. wages down to Chinese levels, so they compete that way. In other words, they're trying to do it by lowering U.S. living standards to third world levels instead of devaluating and having their own currency. And that's why the Americans, they're being brought down to Chinese or below Chinese levels. And it's going to be painful while that happens.
Well, you're right. And San Francisco is one example of that. So, Ambassador, let me ask you the same question. What has to happen, ideally, not saying that it's, you know, going to or whatever, but if in your eyes, what do you think are the most critical elements of things that have to happen in order to turn this ship around?
You know, what we need is to, you know, to have a military, like we talked about, act now. Okay. I believe that, you know, this cabal is on their last stages. It's going to be interesting to see what's happening in Israel with the election of this Walker Netanyahu, and if he's going out or not going out, and what, you know, Trump will do to save him. Yes, but we have a situation in the Middle East. Every time they are planning to do some war, the cabal normally make China busy with something. In the past, it was SARS, you know, bird flu and whatever. Each time they were, you know, attacking Iraq and other things. Now you have a Hong Kong incident with demonstrators and the revolt that is in Hong Kong. So for me, it looks like they are positioning themselves to start a war.
Yeah, okay, I know that, but I've repeatedly heard from the U.S. military that they're no longer going to be fooled by the Zionists into war. And I do think the Chinese need to work with the U.S. military to create a new international architecture to replace the one that was put in place at the end of World War II. And they're the people you can work with who are actually reasonable and rational and actually have a system, a meritocratic system, quite similar to what happens inside China. But the other thing I wanted to ask you, Ambassador, is that, you know, years ago I heard that about 1 million people were going to be have to flee the United States. And I heard this many times from many sources. At one point, they were trying to get to move to the northern island of Hokkaido, and then were turned away. And then there was talk of them going to New Zealand, and the people in New Zealand didn't want them. And now, recently, suddenly, this story has come up again. This time from my military sources who are saying they want to send these people to a Jewish autonomous zone in Siberia, which I know exists. I've been there. There is such a zone.
I know that. I know that
like
place.
that.
I know the place. What you're talking about?
Have you heard any talk about like 1 million people being shipped out of the United States to these areas?
No, I haven't heard, but I know about the Jewish autonomous state there in Russia.
Yeah.
You know, they should send all the Ashkenazis there.
I would say, as someone as an Ashkenazi myself, I would just say, send the criminals, okay? Just the criminal Ashkenazis, please. No, I mean, not fully. I mean, I'm mixed like most of us, but you know, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Just concentrate on the satanic criminal element who aren't actually contributing to society. And that's about 1 million people out of what, 5 million so-called Jews.
So what I meant with that is basically that, you know, we're talking about anti-Semites. You know, the Semite Jewish people, they have a connection to the region of Israel, but many of the European Jews have no connection at all to Israel. They have more connections to Eastern Europe, and you know, so in that case, it would not be a problem for them to be in Siberia. It would be the same thing as being in.
Their traditional homeland of the Ukraine is now suffering a depopulation. There's a lot of empty houses there, and that's their traditional homeland. That's the kingdom of the Khazars. Why not go there, you know?
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Well, that's a very good point, Benjamin. Who exactly were you suggesting that they were going to be shipping of these 1 million? I mean, your opinion is that you would want just the criminals to go there, but what are you hearing?
I heard this from like Japanese military intelligence, from Pentagon peoples. You know, I've heard this from a lot of people. I don't, you know, it's not an idea that originated with me, but I would say that it would be a subgroup of people who do not actually worship Yahweh or whatever, but who worship Lucifer and who practice human sacrifice. It's a cult and there's about 1 million members. They pretend to be Jewish, but they're not actually Jewish, and they hide behind the Jews. The thing what people don't understand about the ghettos is that it wasn't just Jews. Anybody who was not a Christian was put there. So like my ancestors are more like scientific atheists than Jews, but they had to live in the ghettos because it's the only place they could be. And that's true of a lot of them. But there was a group that they're mentioned in the Book of Ruth, who practice human sacrifice, and this is the subgroup that is the real problem. And so would be a very, very good thing for the Jewish people to have this satanic group hiding behind them removed, and they could stop being used like the Matador's Cape, and every time the satanic group causes problems, they blame the Jews, which isn't the real problem. And people need to understand that.
You know, it's such a good point, because I can remember growing up and I had friends, you know, that were Jewish, and I was raised, you know, Catholic or whatever, but it's like, we all just got along. We all just, you know, we had our differences, you know, we respected their Seders and their Hanukkahs, and they respected our Christmas and whatever. And it was just like, we got along, man. We just appreciated and respected each other. And then this explosion really, this came, I would say, more so in the past 5 years, or the past 2 years or 3 years.
And you know, if you take a lot of this Jewish supremacism that you see among some groups, it's exactly like the Nazi ideology. You just substitute Aryan for Jew and as a chosen race, and you have the same thing going on. And that's the subgroup where they want to, you know, enslave the rest of humanity. They've written about it. They talked about it. This is the subgroup. And that's why getting rid of Benjamin Netanyahu would be so important, to liberate the Jewish people from their criminal ruling class. And that's why he's fighting. He's saying we're going to start a war. He's going to say the Arabs stole the election. Anything to avoid losing power, because then he would suddenly face war crimes charges for things like Fukushima and 9/11 and all the other, let's not even mention the tsunamis in Indonesia and the storms in Myanmar, all the other stuff they've been doing, at pretending they're God because they had access to this high technology weapons. This is the group that needs to have a Nuremberg type tribunal.
Yeah.
I've always pushed for a truth and reconciliation, but I'm getting to the point, a lot of us are thinking, that ain't going to cut it. A lot of people just are beyond that. And I think definitely.
Well, you see that Breitbart was reporting that, who was it, the president of, was it the president of Norway? I'm sorry, or Sweden, was suggesting that
Prime Minister.
Yeah, Prime Minister, who was suggesting that that cannibalism could somehow, save save the environment. I mean, this is sick, folks, but this is really
All
where.
right, let me tell you something, okay?
This is sick.
On my airplane ride to Canada, okay, I was served what they called beef, all right? And I know what beef is. I swear to God, whatever that meat was, it didn't come from a cow. Okay, I don't want to go further down that hole, but it may be it's already started, and a lot of these bodies in the morgues are disappearing into the hamburger sausage plants. I wouldn't surprise me at all if that's going on already.
Yeah, I have. Benjamin, as an investigative reporter, you really do come across a lot of things that you just cannot publish. And I've seen things that I cannot publish. I've heard things that I cannot publish. I'll describe just briefly. I mean, when you see a baby in a pot on a stove that looks like they're making stew, and I hate to say it, folks, but nothing's going to shake people up unless they see it for themselves or they hear really what's going on. And in terms of Siberia, if it were up to me, I'd dig a big pit and I'd throw them in there, and that's what they would deserve for what they've done to these babies and children, child trafficking, sacrificing them. I think it's a pit to hell is really where they need to go. But Ambassador, did you want to comment on that as we kind of start wrapping up?
Yeah, I just remember when they were having these baby soups in China. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were costing like 3,000 euro per thing. I mean, people are sick in the head. They think that they will get to live a little bit longer by doing things like that. But I mean, they've been mixing the food with, pork, with horse meat, with human meat. Everything. They've been mixing it up and putting it out there. And these people are sick and twisted.
Japanese gangsters have threatened in the past to turn me into sausage. They say they just put me through the grinder machine. They wouldn't know the difference. I've actually been threatened with that. So yeah, they do it, I'm sure. But that's the sort of thing. I mean, it's when they're saying we've been killing 40,000 American children every year and torturing them and eating them and extracting, adrenaline from their brains and drinking their blood and stuff. People aren't going to say, "Oh, big hug, I forgive you." No, it's not going to be that easy.
No, you're right. There's something definitely has to be done about this. This is, against every, cell of decency in your body, regardless of what religion you come from, unless you're Satanist. But that's the problem, is that when they realize that many people who are running the world are these Luciferian, Satanists, and they're doing this. Like, who would believe them? Can you imagine these children and these people who have been, even Kathy O'Brien, when she first came out talking about the MK Ultra and how she was used as a sex slave. I mean, people would not believe that. Even today, they wouldn't believe it. And that's the problem. That's the matrix that we're living in. That's the false reality.
I had a young American woman she came to me for help, and she'd been an MK Ultra. She'd been chained to a bed in a psychiatric hospital in California, drugged and forced to watch videos all day, and raped repeatedly. And this is in the United States. I met this person. I mean, she stayed at my house. I helped her, and she's okay now. But this is someone I actually met in person. This is not some story off some internet site, This is, and that I'm sure is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, that's just an example I personally ran into. This happens, folks. It's real.
Yeah, this stuff, and of course, Q has also said that, 60% of this will not be made public, 40%. And I think even that changes from 80 to 20, that just some of this can never be out in the public. And because we have that Smith-Mundt Act that Obama had, I'm sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? He rejected the Smith-Mundt Act, which barred the United States government from using propaganda against its own citizens. So we have the fact that the fake news media consistently distorts, lies, and misleads the American public. It's very hard to get the truth out, very hard to get information out. And so, sites like myself, like the GoldFish Report, do have a lot of difficulty in trying. Like when I was at the White House, they would stand in front of me when there was a press gaggle in front of the West Wing. The larger networks would just walk right in front of me and set up their cameras, and they didn't even care. And I was the new kid on the block, so I wasn't going to make any waves. But it was very obvious that they figured out what I was doing there, and and that was really a sign that, boy, they are just. This is a sign to them that it's coming down. That you really have to start reporting this news because other people are there to do it. So
I went through your what you just went through was one of the first ever foreign reporters at the Bank of Japan when I was just a young reporter. And at a certain point, I just said no, and I just pushed them out of the way and forced the issue. And now it's normal for foreign reporters to get front seat at the Bank of Japan. It didn't used to be that way. So I suggest that you actually, if necessary, push them physically aside. Say, hey, I was here first. Get out of my way.
Well, I don't want the Secret Service. I don't want the Secret Service, telling me I have to leave.
No, if you're there first and they push you first, they get kicked out, not you.
Exactly. Well, we'll see. I like I said, I was the new kid on the block. I wasn't going to make any waves. It was more important. I just, learned the routine and the ropes there before I,
right.
But I was considered lower press. So, I wasn't given the same. Oh, Benjamin, I wasn't even allowed to preset for press conferences. So I would get there and I just have to set up on the fly. And even the ambassador saw one where the camera was like pointed horizontal. It was sideways. And I'm like, this is crazy. I need to preset because I need to set up my equipment so I can, live stream. But you know what? It was a great experience. I will be going back hopefully very soon. But I will definitely be back to report more. Ambassador,
did you ever get to ask questions of Donald Trump?
Oh, my hand was up. I was going to ask questions, but it was the first press conference I was at. Lucky enough was that one with Jim Acosta, where he kind of hijacked the entire press conference. And April, whatever her name is, they were so rude to the president. I felt so embarrassed. I was embarrassed for, the president. How rude and disrespect, like no respect for the office of the presidency whatsoever, whether they like him or not. I never saw
well,
such disrespect.
If you ever do, ask him why he didn't keep his promise and tell us who did 9/11. He said that they would, if he became president, we'd know, and he hasn't kept that. Could you ask him that? Why, who stopped him from doing that? Just to get a look at
my list. It's on my list. Trust me. All right, Benjamin. Thanks, Ambassador. How about you? Do you want to close up with some comments? I know we kind of got off the subject of finance, but as Benjamin pointed out, it's all related, and this is really these are some of the factors that are at play in this entire world geopolitical stage here.
No, I think the next coming weeks will be very, very important for all of us.
My request is please don't let them refinance the government in Washington, D.C. past September 30th.
Right.
Pull the plug.
Okay. I'm sorry, Ambassador, did you have any other comments that you want to make?
No, this is what I want to say. And I think that what we should do is try to make a program again in 2 or 3 weeks. And then we will see what have happened. But, I pray
what about
for...
Brexit? Isn't this delay in the Parliament there really, is he only going to ask for it until October 31st, or what do you think?
No,
Well, we'll start with the ambassador first, and then I'll ask Benjamin. I know we're trying to close up.
To be honest with you, I think that this Brexit thing is also another brainwashing thing that they're doing. You understand? And so let's see what's going to happen with it. I have no comments about it other than that you know, I hope that more countries would exit the European Union. Understand? But
Yeah. Benjamin, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah,
I know you spoke about it in your report.
I talked to senior British people, and the intelligence and military are behind Brexit, and the EU needs to be redone. There's a group of 47 democracies, including Russia, that has existed since the 1940s. That's a perfect replacement for the EU. This is not against Europe. It's against a specific non-democratic bureaucracy. It's nothing to do with European unity and friendship. People need to understand that. The EU does not equal Europe. Those are two separate things. The British are very pro-European. They're just against the nasty bureaucracy in Brussels, okay?
All right, great. Well, gentlemen, this was a very interesting conversation. I think this gave the viewers a lot of insight into what the status is of the financial and economic affairs geopolitically. And there's going to be more to come. There'll be more developments over the next few weeks, like the ambassador just said, and maybe we'll come back and have Benjamin and the ambassador at that time when more developments happen, come back and give us another update and some more commentary on that. But I thought this was an excellent discussion. And I want to just ask Benjamin, do you have any final comments that you'd like to make?
No, it's just that we've all got to push, and we all got to do it. If we all push, we can make it happen this year, not next.
With the people, it has to, you know, here President Trump was saying when he was elected, he wants to return the power back to the people. So what are people going to do with it when they have it?
People ask me, what can I do? Anybody can pick up their phone and call their congressman. Anybody can go, you know, take what action you personally can. Pressure from the bottom up would be enough to pop the cork out.
Exactly. That's how water boils, right? From the bottom. You're absolutely right. People have to take some measure of responsibility, personal responsibility, something, just anything, just something, right?
Whatever is closest to you is most important. So anything that's wrong in your immediate life, start with that.
Yeah. Very good advice. Thanks, Benjamin. And Ambassador, did you have any final comments?
Yes, just keep on praying, and I will be doing some work now in the next coming days, and hopefully it will be successful, and it will, you know, help also with liberating this planet. Yeah.
Good.
That's wonderful news. And then we will be back in, let's say, Benjamin, would you like to return again in about a month or so? We'll kind of give an update and see where things are at that point. Would you?
Yeah, let's see, you know, when enough, there should be a lot of big stuff happening. I'd say let's see what happens with the Israeli election and the U.S. September 30th payments deadline. And also if there's going to be Iran U.S. summit, which will, of course, determine the future of Israel.
Exactly. Well, that'll be interesting. So thank you both for joining us. We hope the viewers enjoyed this. Please go to our goldfishreport.com and help support this channel. You can go there and make a donation, or you can become a Patreon at our Patreon site, and the links are all on our website for you. So we hope you enjoyed this. We thank both of our guests for being here, and we'll be back again with another report. And so this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report. Thanks for viewing.